gotten a ton of recommendations for Indian movies lately, but one that I got absolutely zero recommendations for was one that I recently saw the trailer for and I was instantly intrigued. Television is the new Punjabi romantic comedy that also packs in a social commentary. So should you go see this? A small village is thrown into social chaos when a television is given as part of a dowry. So a family receives a television as part of a dowry, and all of the villagers come to congregate at the home to watch this new and provocative invention. Now, the film takes place in the early 80s, but the TV looks like it was made in the 60s. A young man sees a young woman coming to watch the shows, and he's instantly smitten, causing him to try to win her heart. Now, he falls in love, but his mom is not going to allow the marriage unless a TV is part of the dowry. But that goes against the young woman's father's moral standing. Oh, okay, so I do know that that's a lot and a bit hard to follow, but I don't want to spoil the story. So this is a rom-com at its core, where we watch the young man, Tari, woo the girl of his dreams. Through a bunch of deception to his mom, Tari is able to get married, which then leads to a huge comedy of errors. I took my oldest son, and we were the only ones in the theater, again, which is odd, but we laughed out loud through so much of this movie. I mean, the dialogue is quick and witty, with a lot of absurdity built in. And each of the characters is larger than life in different ways, some exaggerating to the extreme, but in ways that surprisingly work. Now, there are two women who share a big courtyard separated by a wall, and they argue like crazy. I mean, each of their disputes continues to ratchet up, making their claims and threats ridiculous. There's this wheat grinder and a matchmaker who are both slightly off, but that makes them even funnier. The wheat dude is almost like the fool at points because of how his dialogue is crafted, but within the wisdom that's being shared, some wonderful comedy is also being produced. Now, the rom-com aspect of this works, but never gets too mushy or deep into the romance. We can root for the couple to get together and for their happiness, and then it's the chemistry between the two that is pretty effective. We don't get much character development on most of the players within the movie, but as the story goes along, we know enough about them to connect and then be drawn into their individual arcs. I love the social commentary angle because there are a few different topics that are addressed. Now, first and most obvious is how the introduction of the TV affects the way of life within this village. It's a central topic of conversation and curiosity, but it is also a distraction to the villagers because instead of going out from the village into the world, everybody stays put to take in the soft glow of the boob tube. We're shown very effectively also the draw that the entertainment has on the people. They become ravenous for the content, as well as the status of owning one. Now, I loved all of the conversations surrounding how the people got inside the TV and whether or not they could get out. It's a very simplified viewpoint, but one that totally makes sense for anyone who has never been exposed to any technology like that. And there are some hilarious theories that the villagers have about the people on the TV, which also allow for some really humorous situations. The other point of commentary surrounds the idea of dowries. It brings into question why someone would sell their son's happiness for a sum of money or for items. But also, and probably more importantly, that a dowry is a deterrent for having children, especially among the poorer families, because of the fear of having a daughter and not being able to provide a dowry. This story shows how the dowry reduces those getting married to commodities, but it does so without being preachy or overbearing with its message. So this is just under 2 hours in length, but I did feel the time in spots. It's not like the story was dragging, but the time just became apparent. And there are occasional scenes that are there for sort of filler, or maybe ones that felt like they were only included for something like a fart joke. Now, sometimes bits of dialogue are important with these, serving almost as voiceovers to fill in the details, but I would really argue that some of the info isn't important to the overall narrative. The production quality of this is pretty lackluster. I mean, the film quality isn't cinematic, but instead feels very much like a TV show. And there are several times when a program is being shown on the TV, and it's very evident that the image isn't one that is actually coming from the TV, but rather something that's placed there in post-production, because you can see the mouse cursor on the screen. Now, at about the halfway point, the audio gets completely out of sync. And I'm not talking slightly out of sync, but like almost a full second off. It was wildly distracting, but luckily I was reading the subtitles, so I didn't have to focus too intently on the mouth movements of all the actors. But the sound did sync back up, though, for the final act of the film, so it was certainly a weird experience there for just a little bit. And then there's the use of sound effects that are almost out of control. I mean, it's like a kid who was given a playlist of audio stingers, and they just went ham with it. They're pretty overdramatic and very prevalent, but that ridiculousness actually worked to a degree. There are also a few songs performed in this, and they are most definitely being lip-synced. Now, maybe the actors did sing the songs for the soundtrack, but they weren't singing during the actual film. And the story is also fairly predictable, where you can tell where story beats are coming and how the arcs are going to progress. But the funny thing is, even with all those issues, I still had a blast with this, and I walked out with a huge smile on my face. I mean, I was almost giddy from the experience. And when the story was predictable, I didn't care. I was hooked into what was happening and was even happy that I could predict what was going to come because I was looking forward to how I knew the arcs are going to play out. It's been a bit since I've laughed that much at a movie in the theater. So overall, the quirkiness of the characters combined with the wit of the script created a storyline that I thoroughly enjoyed watching. The social commentary is relevant and engaging without being preachy, and despite the production quality being less than what you might expect from a theatrical release, this was endearing, sweet, and wildly funny. There's no sex or nudity, some very mild profanity, and just a bit of violence. I give television 4.5 out of 5 couches. This probably wasn't on your radar to check out, and you may not even want to see it in the theater. But if you do ever get the chance to watch, give it a go, and you may just find yourself laughing out loud a ton. So what are you binging right now? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.